And coming up on The Money today.
For me, it's important that people remember me for who I am rather than what I've done.
Rooney! Oh, wonderful! What a goal! Wayne Rooney out of this world!
He's without doubt one of the best players that this country has ever had.
Man United and Everton legend Wayne Rooney is of course now Derby County's manager. But can Derby, a founder member of the Football League, pull off their own great escape and survive as a going concern? We explore the business and the emotion of saving a grand old club from going under. The cost of living crisis gathers pace. We discuss with lawmakers when the price rises could ease. Plus, each day on The Money features an in-depth Money Talks interview. Today we meet Tony Stein of Healthcare Management Solutions, the man on a mission to provide quality old age and other forms of social care, a huge issue facing this nation. As ever, I want your questions, opinions, suggestions. What do you think of the issues raised in today's On The Money, not least if you're a Derby County fan? Email gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet @gbnews. I'll read out some of your messages later in the show. Stay with us. This is GB News on television and on DAB Plus digital radio. I'm Liam Halligan. You're on The Money. Now we cover all kinds of money and business-related issues here on The Money, from energy prices to social care and, of course, the cost of living crisis. But we also cover the business of music, hospitality and indeed sport. There's no bigger sport than football, and one of the biggest business of football stories right now concerns that grand old club of the East Midlands, Derby County. Founded in 1884, Derby County was among the 12 founder members of the Football League. It's one of only 10 clubs to have competed every season since. One of the top teams of the immediate post-war era, the Rams were a powerhouse during the 70s when I was a kid, famously winning the league twice, not least in 1975 under the legendary management of someone called Brian Clough. But these are tough days for Derby County. The current manager, Wayne Rooney, has just acknowledged his battle with alcohol. In an Amazon documentary to be released tomorrow, the former Manchester United icon says he used to drink for 2 days at a time.
If I got a 2-day period where I had 2 days off, I'd literally go in my house on my own and drink for 2 days. And then once I was back in training, I'd go and train, play, whatever. But it was always, if I had a 2 or 3 day period, I'd almost do it to try and forget these issues I was trying to deal with.
Derby is now down near the foot of the Championship, in danger of dropping into the third tier of English football. But off-pitch issues are even more serious. Having previously ruled Derby had until early February to show the club has funding to reach the end of the season, the Football League just granted a month's extension, so it's now make or break time for Derby County. Thousands of fans have been protesting outside the 33,000-seater Pride Park Stadium. "We are Derby County. We'll fight until the end," they sang. The recent match against Birmingham could have been the last in the club's 138-year history, but for this latest reprieve from the Football League. Derby went 2-0 down in that game, but then fought back, the Rams securing a vital point after a dramatic last-minute equaliser. Whether or not Derby County makes it to the end of the season in May is now in the balance. The club's long-term future is overshadowed in even more doubt. Derby's ownership is embroiled in a complex web of negotiations involving past backers, debts to other clubs, potential future owners, including the US-based Binney family and/or Sports Direct owner Mike Ashley. Wayne Rooney, despite his personal struggles, has been widely praised for the commitment and professionalism he's shown as Derby's manager. Thousands of the Derby faithful want him to stay. But will he have a club to manage? Will Derby County Football Club even exist next season or this time next month? And that's our On The Money question today. Will there be a great escape for Derby County FC? Grown-up discussions with people who really know their stuff as ever here on The Money. We have Tom Greatrex, former Labour frontbencher, now Vice Chair of the Football Supporters Association and on the Football Association Council. Tom, great to have you with us. Andrew Bridgen is a Conservative MP for North West Leicestershire. Many of his constituents are Derby fans, and he's called for the government to help save the club. On the Money regular, Jasmine Birtles is here, as is financial analyst Bob Liddon. Welcome both, who's been following the Derby County story closely. And in our On the Money fan zone, oh yes, the most important guests of all, Derby FC supporters, Adrian Coates and Nigel Owen. Let's start with you two gentlemen, Adrian and Nigel. Nigel, how do you feel at the moment as a Derby County fan? It's one of the biggest names in English football. The future of your club is swinging in the balance.
It's been a real roller coaster. I can tell you how I feel today, and that would be different to how I felt 2 days ago and how I'm going to feel tomorrow. Every headline is hung on by supporters, and as somebody said recently, what did we do before we spent all day on Twitter refreshing and trying to find the latest bit of news? Everybody's desperate to find what will be the way out of this. Recently, the issues with Middlesbrough and Wickham and the EFL supporting them looked like it was going to cause a real problem. Now it looks like there might be a way forward, with Mel Morris coming forward with his offer last week. Mike Ashley was supposed to be out at the weekend, if you believe certain newspapers. And then on Monday, he's come through and said that he's definitely still in. So all at the moment that I'm hanging on is the fact that we have a number of bidders interested in the club. And while people are still interested in buying the club, I believe there's a future there.
And Adrian, you got your Derby County top on. I know you've got Wayne Rooney, Wazza's name across the back. He is, by all accounts, all the Derby fans I've spoken to pretty much want him to stay. They respect his professionalism and commitment. Can Derby be saved, Adrian?
It's very worrying at the moment. I'm concerned that the administrators really need to get this deal over the line quickly, because all the time value is seeping away from the club. And at the end of the day, the people coming in, the potential buyers, there has to be enough value left to make the deal work.
Indeed. Andrew Bridgen, let's go to you. Now, a lot of your constituents are Derby County fans. You and I have talked about this issue for some time. A lot of the shadow overhanging Derby County is actually in the form of tax liabilities. What do you think the government should be doing to help save this grand old name of English football?
Well, I actually spoke to the Minister, Nigel Huddleston, this morning about this issue in the tea room, and it's something we've debated in the chamber. I mean, clearly, my point is that the government are an interested party. There is potentially some 27 million of tax liabilities owed to Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs, and that makes the government a very, very financially interested party. But I mean, the big threat to the successful sale of the club to a new owner who can refinance it are these two claims one from Wickham and one from Middlesbrough, unsubstantiated in the courts, but because of the attitude of the English Football League of accepting them as potential debtors on an unquantified basis. I mean, obviously that's hugely detrimental to any incoming buyer doing a deal for Derby County, and time is not on Derby County's side. We've bought ourselves 4 weeks, and that will go tremendously quickly. Obviously now a lot's riding on Mel Morris's indication on the weekend that he may be willing to take on the liability for these two unquantified claims from two other football clubs.
Mel Morris, of course, a former backer who still owns the Pride Park Stadium. Tom Greatrex, some viewers will remember you as a Labour frontbencher. You were Shadow Energy Minister and an MP for many years. You're now part of the Football Supporters Association, and you work closely with the FA on their council. What does it mean that here in the UK, particularly in England, Port Vale, Bury, Macclesfield Town, and now Derby County, a thoroughbred club, they're going under? What can we do about it?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's an issue which has arisen at Derby recently, but you can go back in recent history and point out a whole number of clubs. And
it's at the core of the community.
And that to me demonstrates that there is a big issue here that isn't specific to Derby. There are issues that have happened at Derby that have actually caused a lot of the problems, and some of the things that Mel Morris did when he was running the club have exacerbated that. But fundamentally, the problem is in English football is there's a casino-like approach to try to get into the Premier League. That encourages types of behaviour amongst owners who get caught up in it. Mel Morris is a fan of Derby, and do things they shouldn't do. But by the time it gets found out, it's almost too late, and you get into that sort of crisis situation we're in now. And I very much feel for Derby County fans because, that Derby is part of their identity. It's part of their life. Those 33,000 and more outside the grounds.
Big ground.
Surely
you can make 33,000.
Well, you would.
Hey, this is the club managed by Brian Clough. Archie Gemmell, famous names of my childhood.
Absolutely. Won the league, and are a big name and a part of the establishment of English football. And this is why I think fundamentally what needs to happen is that football needs to be properly protected.
Well, Mel Morris denies wrongdoing, of course. I'm not gainsaying you. I just need to say that. And hopefully we can get Mel Morris on as we cover this story in the weeks to come. We are going to stick with this here on The Money here on GB News. Jasmine, let me talk briefly to you. You are a consumer-driven journalist. You talk to consumers all the time about their concerns. This is going to break a lot of hearts.
Well, absolutely. And it's not just hearts, because there's money, a lot of money involved for Derby itself. Apparently, the club is really worth about 100 million per year to all
the local
business.
economy.
Exactly. So that's a serious loss. It's not just hearts and soul. It's money as well. And so that is a concern, I think, for those in the actual area.
Let's bring in Bob Liddon. Now, I've known you for many years. You really get into the weeds of financial stories, and you send me interesting emails about them. What do you make of this Derby County situation from a financial rather than an emotional point of view?
Well, I think it can be saved. Firstly, the loan, this £20 million loan that's turned up from some company in Cardiff that's backed by people in New York that's got connections in the Cayman Islands. Personally, I think that's a shareholder loan falsely secured on the assets of the club. That should be reclassified as equity. That takes £20 million off the creditors straight away. Then the next thing that needs to be wiped is all the really quite squashy claims of one part of the Derby empire on the other. This has inflated the size of the enterprise. There's nothing there. If you took all those off the table, it is actually solvent. But that would need a very aggressive approach. The other thing I'd come back on, I don't like what's being talked about at HMRC. They are complicit in this.
Yeah.
If it
goes under, they won't get the money anyway, right?
No.
So keep the thing going, and then you might get the tax.
Well, what happened to making tax digital, where everybody else has to pay straight away? This debt has been there for 3 or 4 years. It's 3 years' worth of income tax and national insurance. Why was that allowed to build up? If that had been nipped in the bud 3 or 4 years ago, as our colleagues said, the whole thing could have been nipped in the bud. And they're complicit in this. And we actually need an inquiry. Who else of the Football League, EFL and Premier League are not on tax digital? How much tax do they owe? It's not just a Derby problem. Derby shouldn't be a kind of scapegoat to push that under the carpet.
Okay, let's go back to the fan zone, if we may. Nigel, you've heard from some of the players involved. Jasmine Birtles, I think, made a really important point. We must never lose sight of this. The importance of Derby County Football Club, not just to people who have followed the club since childhood, like you and Adrian Coates sitting next to you, and so many thousands of other people in Derby and beyond. It's the impact of the club, if this goes under, to morale locally, to the local economy.
Yeah, it's huge, and it's easy to throw around huge and important words like that, but it really is. It is. If you look at the catchment area, this is not a club that has several others on its doorstep. It is Derby County for a reason. It is the whole county of Derbyshire. Chesterfield fans in the north might argue there's a little enclave up there, but it has a huge catchment area. It pulls in fans from lots of different areas, towns and around Derbyshire. We saw there that the stadium sold out last week against Birmingham with the 32,000 plus people in there. When it was in the Premier League not so long ago, there were 32,000 there every week. The potential for the club is huge. The potential for somebody coming in is huge. Yes, there have been errors made. There have been costs run up. But you would feel that given that there's been a bit of a reset in terms of salaries in football, which is ultimately one of the biggest problems around, that now post-COVID, people can get that back on a better keel. I'm not sure it's going to be perfect, but on a better keel. And the club can be run in a more sustainable way, which is what we all want. And hopefully it can be a lead for other football clubs to also be run sustainably. And then the wider football community can be hopeful that they don't find themselves in the situation that we at Derby County find ourselves in right now.
Adrian, it was that match against Birmingham, Midlands rivals, of course, where your team equalised at the death of the match to get that vital point, 2-2 against Birmingham. That's what really sparked my interest in this story, reading that on the sports pages and thinking about the business issues behind it. What was the atmosphere like among fans when that 2-2 equaliser went in?
Well, I wasn't in the ground, but I think it was euphoric. It's almost got to the point where we hope we can actually survive, despite all the damage that the English Football League has done to our prospects. It looks as if we might just be able to survive. There's 4 clubs down there, and clearly Derby are the form club of the 4. That's assuming that Wayne doesn't lose more players, or the English Football League imposes yet more fines and obstacles to getting a solution to Derby. To my mind, to come back to Andrew Bridgen, there is something he can do. The English Football League believes that football debts are a priority. So this is what's created the problem with Middlesbrough and Wycombe. They've decided that Middlesbrough and Wycombe are football debts. This strikes me as utterly incompatible with UK insolvency law. I'd like to know from the government whether this is even legal. And my question to Andrew is, if it is by some quirk legal, he's the governing party. He should make it the case that it's not legal. Absolutely. Let's get the Middlesbrough and Wycombe blackmail attempts off the table.
Of course, Middlesbrough and Wycombe would deny that characterisation of the debts that are purportedly owed to them in their view. I just need to make that clear. Andrew Bridgen, let's go back to you. You are a very, very experienced parliamentary operator. You've shown that over the years. You've got your ear to the ground. You care deeply on behalf of your constituents about Derby County Football Club. What's your instinct about what's going to happen over the next few weeks? Not so much on the pitch, and we'll see if Derby can stay in the Championship, but off the pitch, where it really does count now for the Derby faithful.
Liam, I'd just like to come back on the point about football debts. I've actually been party with other MPs to meetings with HMRC to discuss this very issue. The issue of football debts is if a football club goes into insolvency, preferential creditors are decided by the English Football League as football debts have to be paid at 100%, or there's various penalties that will come against you and you lose your place in the Football League. So they are treated as preferential creditors, and quite rightly, as has been pointed out, the English Football League have caused a problem by allowing Wycombe and Middlesbrough's claims against the club, which have not been substantiated in court for huge amounts of money, to be classed. Well, they won't decide whether they're football debts or not football debts. That creates uncertainty. I've spoken with HMRC. At the drop of the hat, HMRC would get rid of these unique rules for football and make all creditors equal. Obviously, the English Football League would claim that as football clubs quite often go into financial difficulty, that this would actually impoverish the whole of football. However, I don't see why, if it's being run as a business, there should be special rules for football clubs as opposed to the suppliers to that club, which may be in hospitality or equipment or anything, who are under different rules. At the end of the day, it's a business and it should be treated like a business. I think the English Football League, the way they've conducted the matters with Derby County, I think they need to be tread very, very carefully, because I'm not the only parliamentarian who's asking questions about this arrangement with HMRC.
Lots of emails flooding in. John emailed us, gbviews@gbnews.uk, to say, as a Reading FC supporter, I think you need to look at the bigger picture here. Foreign ownership isn't in genuine supporters' interest. Tom Gregory, let's come back to you. For a lot of fans watching this on television, listening on radio, watching on catch-up, they'll be thinking, this doesn't sound like sport to me. It's all getting really complex. Lots of people that aren't genuine football fans are heavily involved here. What's your thoughts as somebody who's closely associated with the Football Association, Football Supporters Association?
Yeah, I think what needs to happen in football, English football, is that there needs to be a sustainable model for how clubs run, because clubs are important to communities, they're important to local economies, as we've heard, they're important to people, as we've heard very eloquently, and you can say that for Derby to every other club that exists. The problem is that the English Football League and the Premier League, they write the rules for themselves. That level of self-interest means that things that happen that shouldn't happen, you get a blind eye turned to. That's why Tracy Crouch's review is really important.
Yeah.
It's on the desk of Nadine Dorries at the moment. I know she's looking at that very carefully. Getting some of those measures implemented will be get to a situation where football clubs as community assets are properly protected, so we don't have stories like this. And what we do have is owners who are in it because they support the clubs, they want them to survive, they see the role that they can have in communities, they can make money out of it. There's nothing wrong with that. Some people do make money out of it, but what they can't do is gamble with them and then decide to walk away when it all gets too difficult, because that is what leaves clubs in a mess, and that's what affects fans and communities the most.
Well, there's a lot happening in the UK at the moment. Cost of living crisis. We're looking at Russia, Ukraine. For me, this is a really important story that really matters to ordinary people, men and women across the UK. The fate of Derby County Football Club. It's 1:27. Stay with us. We're going to carry on this discussion after the break. You're on the money. Welcome back. You're on the money with me, Liam Halligan. We're discussing the future of Derby County Football Club. And just a last word from everybody here before we end this story for today. Bob Liddon, let's talk to you. It's a complex financial issue. What's your thoughts about what should happen briefly?
Well, I think Derby fans, they need to act in a coordinated manner. They need to try and strike out this 20 million loan. They need to get the HMRC through Rishi Sunak to give a full report about why the debt's built up there, who else of football owes and why they aren't making tax digital. And the other thing is they need to do a full rundown of all the anti-money laundering checks that should have been done all around this thing, including on this company that lent money to Derby, and see what we can do.
Treasury Mandarins, take note. Jasmine, your thoughts as a consumer-focused analyst on this?
Well, 29 million that is owed in tax is, as a taxpayer, something we need to claw back. And I think the only way we're going to claw that, or at least half of it, part of it, is if we do some proper negotiations. Because if this folds, we're not going to get any of that.
I want to go to Andrew Bridgen, MP, and our Derby County fans. But before that, Tom, your final thoughts. Where's this going to end up? A lot of fans will be really concerned.
Yep, and I think what needs to happen is the EFL, the previous owners, the administrators need to get in a room, lock the door until they get it sorted out, because they've got the answers between them. They just need to make sure they focus on saving Derby County.
Andrew Bridgen, can you help make that happen? Smoke-filled rooms, a deal being struck to save this club?
To come together, but ultimately I think a lot's riding on the previous owner Mel Morris's assertion that he's going to look after the potential liability of the Wickham and Middlesbrough claims. I think if he'd confirmed that, I think a deal could be done in a week to save the club.
And final word, of course, to the most important people in this conversation. Back to our On the Money fan zones. We've got Adrian Coates. What do you want to happen in the next couple of weeks to save the club that you love?
I think that if the Mel Morris initiative is rejected, I think it's then up to the government to get serious with the EFL and make sure that the debts to Middlesbrough and Wickham do not qualify as football debts.
And one sentence from you, Nigel.
Mel Morris, Steve Gibson, sort it out.
Thank you to all our guests. Nicely done. Tory MP Andrew Bridgen, Vice Chair of the Football Supporters Association, Tom Greatrex, Financial Analyst Bob Liddon, Derby County fans Adrian Coates and Nigel Owen, and Miss MoneyMagpie herself, Jasmine Birtles. This is On the Money with me, Liam Halligan. Coming up on today's Money Talks interview,